Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Robert, and I'm here with my colleagues Rose from the Customer Success and Brad from the product team at Zedonk. In today's webinar, we will introduce a new feature called Stock Check, and that feature will help you monitor and review your stock levels. But before we start, I'd like to review a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. You can submit your questions in the chat box on the right-hand side, and if we have time, we'll answer them during the session. You can also email us on support@zedonk.co.uk. This webinar is recorded, so you will receive a copy shortly after, and we will also upload that recording to Zedonkopedia, where you can rewatch it at a slower playback speed and with closed captions. We expect this webinar to take about 20-30 minutes. Without further ado, I think we're ready now to start with the webinar presentation. So I will now hand it over to Rose.
So for the structure of today's webinar, part one is just going to be some key things to note about using the stock check. I'll go through that with you in a sec. Part two is going to be a guide on how to perform a stock check step by step with a scanning demo. So I'll share my screen for that bit and you will be able to see exactly what I'm doing in my test system. And then part three is going to be a question and answer session with the head of product here at Zedonk, Brad. Okay, so some key things to note. Stock check works with your product stock inventory. This is the area that you'll see this option popping up in, and you can use it to set new closing stock levels across your whole inventory, or just part of it if you prefer, or just a certain selection of products if you wish. It really can be as selective or as broad ranging as you like, depending on what you're doing the stock check for. Just to note as well, the stock check works with barcodes, so you will need to have the barcode module in order to use this new function. And of course, scanning as well if you want to use the scanner to do your stock check. You can have multiple users contributing to the stock check at once. So 2 members of your team or more can be in one stock check at the same time, working together. And finally, there's no need to complete the stock check all in one go. Obviously, we understand it's a big task and it can take a few days to get done. So you can start and return to a stock check whenever you like with automatic saving of your progress. And you can only push the actual finished stock levels when you finish your stock check and you've confirmed that in Zedonk. So for the purposes of today's webinar, what we'll do is we'll run through the process of doing a stock check end to end with a scanner as well, just so everything's really clear and easy to follow. And then when you're conducting your own, obviously you have this as a reference to come back to. So we'll start from our Zedonk home screen. We're going to head into our product stock inventory, as this is where the stock check will be done. And then you'll see in the top right hand corner here, we have the stock check button. Click in there. You can see we have a few options here. We have start stock check if we want to start a new one. We have join if we want to join an existing stock check that another user has started. We have add selected to stock check if we want to add some specific products to the check, but not all of them. We have cancel stock check if we need to cancel it. And we have view running stock checks to see if we have any stock checks that are currently open, currently being used in your system. So for now, let's start a new stock check. We'll click here. And as you can see, we're being prompted to choose whether we want to include all products in this season in the stock check or only the ones selected. So I'm going to click all, click OK. So as soon as we enter, you can see Zedonk just gave us a little pop-up window to tell us who's currently here. And if you had 2 users working the stock check at one time, they would both show here. It would show when they last accessed the stock check, the date, the time, what was updated, and whether they're currently here or not. At the moment, it's only me, so you can just see my username there. So if we look at the columns that we have here, it's worth mentioning now that when you're doing a stock check, you're telling Zedonk the total quantities of what you have in stock. So if I'm looking at my inventory levels, I can see my current closing stock for my Rose address. My closing stock is 20 units. So if I type 6 into the stock count column, what I'm telling Zedonk there is that I have a discrepancy, which is this column here. I would have a discrepancy of minus 14. So I'm telling Zedonk that I thought I had 20 in stock. When I did my stock count, I only found 6. Therefore, there's a discrepancy of 14. Therefore, Zedonk is going to make a manual, well, an automatic adjustment based on what you've done of minus 14 units. So that's just a quick overview of how these columns work, because it might look a bit confusing at first, but it's actually really simple when you look at it that way. And of course, it's going to give you discrepancy cost as well. You can, as with any other area in Zedonk, add extra columns here by going into the select move filter area. You can add a stock count column, you can add some extra information, whatever you prefer. Let's cancel. Okay, so now for the fun part. I'm going to show you how we can do our stock take with a scanner. So you can see in the top right hand corner, if you have scanning, you'll see this little scanning button appear. So we can click in here. It's telling me that the existing quantities that I've just typed on the previous page have been brought forward here, which is really useful. I'm going to click OK. In this box here, we have a breakdown of all of the products that we have in our inventory currently. And we also have the expected column. So this basically is what your current closing stock is. And it's telling you that when you do the stock check, this is what Zedonk will expect to find. So it just gives you a really clear overview of, as I said, if you have any discrepancies, you can see in the quantity column what you've actually found and what you're expecting based on your closing stock. So unfortunately, you can't see what I'm doing here behind the screen, but you might hear some beeping. Hopefully you will. And what I have is a load of printed barcode labels for some of my products. And I'm just going to go through them and scan them with my scanner, and you'll see what's happening on screen when I'm scanning the products that I have in my hands right now. So let's give this a little go. So you can see every time I scan, I'm scanning a different product here. I'm just getting a confirmation on screen of what I've scanned, the product ID, the size and the quantity. So just then I scanned 3 different products, but I also just want to show you what happens if I scan 2 of the same product in the same size and color combination. So that's the first scan. That's the second scan. So you can see when I've scanned it twice, it's given me a quantity of 2 because I literally have 2 of the same product in my hand that I've just scanned twice. And that's how it creates the total quantities. So what you might also see here is this little message popping up telling me that I've reached the expected and I've reached more than expected. And that, as I said, is based on your expected quantity column. So if you think that you have 3 of one product in stock and you scan it 3 times, Zedonk is going to go, great, yeah, we've reached what we expected. If I scan another one, it's going to say, oh, that's actually more than you expected. So just in case, you know, if you wanted to like double check the quantity, or if you knew that you might actually be finding more than you expected, then you might think, okay, that's fine. But thanks for telling me that, Zedonk. Great. So a few things to point out here. In the top right corner, we have an actions button. So if I click in there, you can see I have a few options here. I can undo my last action. So say that one that I just scanned right there, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. I can go undo, and that's removed that. I can find and set quantity. So if I want to search for a particular product, I can use the search field here. If I want to find some jeans, I can click that product. And I can add a manual quantity here if I want to. If I already know what the quantity is and I don't want to scan them all in, I could just do that. And I also have a help section here. So this is just something that we've added in. Just some extra information to remind you of certain areas, certain processes, anything that you need to find out about the stock check area. You can probably find it here. And of course, you can see our Zedonkopedia article as well. But this is just a quick sort of on-screen run through if you ever need it. Okay, so let's say I'm done now. This was my stock check. It was a really small one. I'm going to click finish. So now we're back in our list view. Zedonk is telling us in the top right corner that my progress has been saved, so I don't need to manually save it. I can now leave if I want to, and I can come back again. So let's say I've done part of my stock check today, but I've not finished it all, and I want to come back tomorrow. I can leave. That's all saved for me. And then if I want to go back into the same stock check, I can click stock check, and I can click continue. If I wanted to cancel it, I could cancel it. Okay, so we've gone back in. So say I've come back to my stock check a few days later. I'm happy with all of the quantities that I've got in here. Again, Zedonk is just going to give us a little confirmation in this column here. If I want to run through, check, everything's fine, I think it is. What I can then do is click submit in the top right hand corner. Here, I can tell Zedonk what I want it to do with any blank lines. So any lines in the stock check that I haven't filled in values for, I can tell them that I want that treated as a zero quantity. So say if you got to the end of your season and you wanted to do a stock check for everything, and you only wanted to enter exactly what you found in your stock room, and you want everything else set to zero, you just want to treat this as a full overwrite of any current stock levels you have, you would probably want to select that. But let's say for today, I just wanted to do a stock check of some particular products. I think the stock levels are correct for everything else in my system. So I'm just going to tell Zedonk that anything that I've left blank, no stock adjustments should be made. Okay, let's click continue. It's telling me that 2 lines will be adjusted, which sounds right to me. I've only scanned in 2 products in this stock check, so sounds great. And it's also telling me to add an adjustment description for your own records. So, you know, say if 2 people from your production team did this stock check, you can write down who did it, what the reason was. For example, I'm just going to say, here's a stock check for, end of season. So when my other team members are looking at these adjustments, they can see exactly how they've been done. They can see that it was via a stock check. They can see who did the stock check and why I did it. And then we can perform the action. And that has updated our quantities. So as I said, you can check how these adjustments have been made at any point if you want to. Just like in your main product inventory as normal, you can click into these values and you can see it's telling me here what adjustment has been made. It's telling me that it was a test adjustment, that's what I called it, and it was via stock check. I've got the date, the time, all the information I need there. So I've got full visibility on everything that's happening in my stock levels in my system. So for the last part of today's webinar, this is going to be our question and answer session with our head of product here at Zedonk, Brad. So yeah, question 1 is going to be who can benefit from using the stock check? Question 2, how does it work with multiple users? Question 3, how does it work with different seasons and locations? Because obviously we know a lot of our clients are currently working with a lot of different stock pools in Zedonk, so that'll be a really useful one. Okay, so I'm going to hand you guys over to Brad, who can give you a bit more information.
Thank you, Rose, for that comprehensive overview of the new stock check functionality in Zedonk. I know there's a couple of questions for me, so I'm just going to start answering them as simple as I possibly can. The first one being who can benefit from using stock check? Well, people sometimes call stock check different things. It could be also known as stock take, stock counting, but we've gone with the word in stock check. Now, the reason why people can benefit from this is that it's obviously a manual counting process where you work out as a business your inventory of goods. Now, this is key for the business because it influences your purchasing, your production, your sales process, and also any integrations you have with Shopify or if you've got a POS connector. Now, there's varying different ways that stock check is done in the industry. You've got your general annual, which is done once a year, and that's great for auditing purposes. You've got a continuous stock check, which is that you may go around, checking different type of products such as your dresses, your tops, and your shoes from week to week. And also you've got your spot check, which is that you may believe that you have an issue with a certain product, or someone went to go and buy it and the stock wasn't available in Zedonk. So there's a lot of pros to this information. A lot of what Zedonk is run off, the allocation module, a lot of the reporting module, your raw material inventory requirements, everything like that is run off of your stock inventory levels. So this is why it's key that your stock levels in Zedonk are correct and up to date. So moving on to question number 2, how does the stock check functionality work with multiple users? Now, when we were developing this functionality, we obviously have to consider the real life scenarios, that it wouldn't just be one member of the team that will be scanning away all the stock levels per season in Zedonk over the course of a couple of days. Obviously, Rose mentioned that we do save the quantities you put on the stock check, so that is an option. However, I'm going to quickly show you how this has been developed as well, just to allow multiple users to do a stock check together. They can input their quantities on their screen, and then one person can then submit that to Zedonk. So the example I'm going to give you at the moment is I've got 2 different screens here. These are actually 2 different users. Now I'm going to ask my colleague Marco to join my stock check to help me count some stock. So if I very simply in this user here, which is me, I'm going to start a stock check, and we see the screen that we are used to seeing. Now my colleague Marco will then come into the product stock inventory area. He'll go on the stock check and he will join the stock check. Now, straight away, he gets told that there's another user in this stock check. And also I can see on my other user that Marco has joined the stock check. Now, what we're now going to do is we are going to scan some stock in. Obviously, you could always do this manual as well. So I'm just going to click on the scanner and I'm going to input a barcode number as if I had scanned it myself. Okay, so I'm just going to put in 2 units. Now, Marco at the same time has scanned 2 of the same items. Okay, now when he clicks finish, it is now showing 2 on his screen, and when I click finish, it shows 2 on my screen. Now, what we want to do is that we want to submit this to Zedonk, but obviously our stock count total is 4. We've got 2 from one user and we've got 2 from another user. So we can make a decision. Marco wants to submit the stock count on behalf of us. So he will very simply click the submit button. A pop-up will appear to tell him that the figures on his screen are not the total for all of the users, which we just mentioned. Okay, so very simply, if he now clicks refresh, he will see that he has pulled in my stock numbers, and therefore when we now click the submit, it does another check and it makes sure that those figures are all correct. We're checking continuously and all the time, so you're going to have no issues there. He can see that my user, Brad, is still actually in the stock check, and I'm actually going to force Brad out of the stock check. There's a little security check to make sure that we're happy to do this, to make sure we don't lose any quantities or anything like that. I'm going to click OK. And just to show you on this user, if I now type in a number, it would tell me that the stock check has been ended, and it told me who did it. Now, we just can go through the normal processes of submitting a stock check, where you can either do ignore 0 lines or something like that, continue through the process. Obviously, you get a stock discrepancy report delivered straight to your computer, and then you can perform the action. Moving on to the third question is, how does stock check work in different seasons and locations? Now, if we speak about seasons first, we have allowed that users can do a stock check in multiple seasons in one go. So this will mean that I can go and do a stock check in my spring summer 23, and then I can then create and start a new separate stock check in my Shopify season, for example. The reason of letting people do this is that some clients have their season set up in different ways in Zedonk. Sometimes they're separated out by product category, dresses, sometimes it's done by different brands. There's a variety of different reasons. So you are able to have a stock check running in each season. And as my colleague Ro showed, you can always leave the stock check, and Zedonk will forever hold those stock figures until you either cancel the stock check or you submit it. On to the second part of the question is locations. Now, not many people know this at the moment because it's not yet being publicized. There will be a webinar within the next couple of months, is that Zedonk has been developing on the back end multiple locations. It's something that you guys have been asking for us to do. So if you can see in my system, very simply in my product stock inventory, I have multiple different locations. Now, this development is a lot bigger than just simply having an inventory location. I will leave that conversation to the webinar that will be coming up in the next couple of months. But as part of this stock check development, we are allowing people to have a stock check not only done per season, but also per location. So I could, if I wanted to, in my season 2020, I could do a stock check for my 40 stock. I could then leave that stock check, so Zedonk will hold my numbers, and I could then go and do a stock check for ecom. Or we could have the reverse, that Brad might be doing a stock check on 40 and my colleague Marco might be doing a stock check on ecom at the exact same time. And obviously you are allowed to have multiple users in those stock checks within seasons and locations. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for that, Brad. That was super useful. And I think that's going to be it from me. So I will hand you guys back to Robert. And if you have any questions, as he said, please do put them in the chat. And yeah, we'll be happy to answer any extra questions that you have.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rose and Brad, for this presentation. We would normally ask if you have any questions, but I don't see any questions in the chat box. So this is where we're going to stop. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. And as Rose mentioned, if you still have any questions, do send us an email. And we'll see you again next month. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.